It's broke, don't need a four heater, but you can 4 feet approach me. I'm summoning focus of Gogeta. Slight work, so imagine me chilling when folks meet up, cause my.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. There's been a lot of chatter lately about the state of babyfaces in WWE. I've been very loud about this too. In fact, I think I spent a couple of minutes, after SmackDown, talking about the state of the babyface on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown especially, where you have Roman Reigns that is entirely too strong, and so is Charlotte, and so is Becky Lynch, if we're being quite honest. What we have at this point, a lot of baby faces that are being emasculated, and the heels are not getting their comeuppance. Now, there are going to be times where the babyface is going to get humiliated. I mean, it happens. It's integral. It needs to happen for the babyface to get tossed in a hole, in order for them to drag themselves out of it, in order to put, a babyface in the underdog role, if that's what you want, even if they're a conquering babyface, like a Drew McIntyre or a very strong babyface like a Big E. You still want to create that energy where they're behind the 8 ball in some way. I don't care how you do it. You got to do it somehow. We can go through 100 million stories of how the babyface can end up in a hole and has to dig himself out of it. But that's fine. And so that's not the issue. But the issue is getting back. You can't keep digging the hole deeper and never letting the babyface out, or just having the babyface at the bottom of the hole yelling at people who are passing by to throw them a rope. At some point, the babyface has to start to climb out of the hole. So in these storylines, I'm speaking specifically to WWE because AEW doesn't really have this problem. They actually do a decent job with their babyfaces. A decent job. With the ones that they care about, they do a decent job. But WWE does a horrible job with the babyfaces now. And not too long ago, and this is a recent problem, because it wasn't too long ago, maybe about a year or so, where I was talking about none of the heels had any heat, especially during, again, Raw, where Drew McIntyre was the champion. None of the heels had any heat because he was just beating them up every single week. He was just knocking them around, claymoring them in the face every single week. There has to be a balance. You can't have the babyface stomping the heel every week, because otherwise the heel has no heat. Then there's no match. I don't care about the match. You can't have it the other way either, because if I lose faith in the babyface, then there is no match. I don't care about the match. You have to create a balance, and the balance should lean more towards the heel. The heel has to get heat, but the babyface has to show fire and show a willingness to fight back, has to show passion, has to show character, because the babyface is what you want the fans to believe in. They're the ones who are going to get the crowd involved. The heel exists as an obstacle to the babyface. That's the point of this whole ordeal. This is why, if you're a top babyface, you can potentially make more money than being a top heel. I don't know about, we could probably ask that question of, who makes more money, top heels or top babyfaces. I don't know. But when I look at promotions, with the exception of some of the smaller NWA promotions, top babyface is usually the biggest money maker. All right? So, Sting, Hogan, of course, Steve Austin, of course, John Cena, of course. We can play that game, but I'm pretty sure in the territory era it might have been a little bit different, even though the NWA kept heel champions for this very reason. But when you also look at those territories and you look at the WWF and the WWE or whatever, you would see that they often avoided giving the heel his comeuppance because there was a plan for the heel to get his comeuppance later on. Okay? So you'll have Ric Flair. He'll get into a match with one of the Von Erichs. Von Erichs are super over. He would run down Texas, run down the Von Erichs. Oh, they're not good enough, yada, yada, yada. They get in the match. Von Erichs kick the shit out of Ric Flair. Then Flair would either win by some type of chicanery, pulling the tights, outside interference, or he would lose, but he'd lose in some chicanery. He got thrown over the top rope. He lost via countout. He lost via disqualification. Whatever, in order to get the people back into the building the next time. This is why I don't get too caught up in disqualifications and countouts in WWE. It's a useful weapon in order to build heat. Babyfaces should beat the heel to the point where the heel bails and leaves. Then you build up to something else. You have 100 fucking gimmick matches where the heel can't get away, or they absolutely have to fight. Falls count anywhere, steel cage match, ladder matches, I quit matches, all these kind of things that prevents the heel from walking out. How do we logically get there if the heel never walks out, if the heel never cheats? Then why do we ever get to that point? Right? So that's just basic storytelling. The end should be on the beginning. The end should hang on the beginning. How do we start this thing? So a Ric Flair story in the territories will start with, some guy wins the number one contendership. He's going to wrestle the world heavyweight champion. Flair would come into town. He'd run down the guy, wrestle the guy, either beat him by cheating or lose by cheating. And then the guy would say, next time Ric Flair comes around here, I'm going to get my hands on him or whatever. And then you book it the next time. And maybe sometimes you may even do a straight up rematch without a gimmick. But eventually you do get to the gimmick. Eventually you do get to the steel cage match where it seems like, okay, Flair can't run away now. Eventually you do get there. So in WWE today, the babyfaces don't have any goddamn heat. They don't have any fire. They don't have any passion. And it's due mostly to the presentation. And the presentation is two people stand in the ring and they're yapping at each other. And they're saying some of the most horrible, craptastic shit to one another. And the babyface doesn't do anything. Which is why I was often very impressed when Liv Morgan smacked Becky Lynch on Raw from, I think it was the 22nd. There is no reason for Liv Morgan to stand right there while Becky Lynch mocks her and just lets it happen. Why would you do that? No human being would do that. And that's part of what makes it work, is that people look at things and say, what would I do in this situation? Or what would I want to do in this situation? And then the babyface gives it to them. They say, Becky Lynch is in my face making fun of me. I would smack the shit out of her. So Liv Morgan slaps the shit out of her. Good call. Right decision. Okay? Now, juxtapose that to Toni Storm on SmackDown. Toni Storm gets hit in the face with a pie. Okay, it happens. What did you do after you get hit in the face with a pie? You would lash out. If you got hit in the face, you would lash out. It's not Looney Tunes. This isn't a cartoon. You wouldn't just stand there and get hit with another pie. And then she wouldn't be able to just walk away. That makes people lose faith in the character of Toni Storm. And of course, I saw the dirt sheets and all these people running around. What did Meltzer say? Oh, there's no hope for anybody on SmackDown. There's no hope for anybody. It's like, that's not entirely true, but you can see why people say stuff like that. Because she's restrained. She's not being allowed to show any fire, any balls, any passion. You hit me in the face with a pie, she should have tore Charlotte's clothes off. And Charlotte should have ran away. And that's the problem with heels having too big of an ego. You shouldn't even have people with big egos be heels. Because that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to dominate. That's not your job. Your job as a heel is to look like a badass, talk like a badass, but be a coward. Unless you're Brock Lesnar or Lashley. In which case, somebody should hit you in the nuts or hit you in the knee with something or something like that in order to weaken you, and then you'll run away. But for Charlotte, no, there's no way Charlotte should be that strong. She's not that much bigger than Toni Storm for Charlotte. If it was Charlotte and some midget girl and she kicked her and knocked her over or something like that, okay. But Toni is not like really small where that makes sense. This whole thing made no sense. And it made Toni look like shit. And it's too often that this is happening, especially on Raw and SmackDown, where Roman is just absolutely punking dudes, and then there's no repercussions, there's no comeuppance, the storyline just ends. And it's like, I don't know about this one, dog. Let's take another example. Baron Corbin and Madcap Moss, how they were just beating up Kevin Owens every single week. He would just come out there and just get beat up. And he didn't think, to jump these guys one at a time while they was backstage or anything like that. He didn't think to bring somebody else to help him. He didn't bring an equalizer, like a chair or a bat or something like that, and chase these guys off. There was nothing. It was the same thing over and over again. He just showed up, got beat up, and then he laughed at him and walked away. Like, how many times could that possibly happen before you start to say, okay, look, this is some bullshit, right? This is not going to work. And this is what I think of, when I'm watching these matches and I'm watching these characters. Because at least in AEW, the baby faces are willing to chase the heel off. That's the good thing about MJF, is that he's a great promo, sure, but he's great at being a chicken shit. He knows when to get the fuck out of there. He knows when to hit that point, cause the physicality to start, and then bail. Because that's the money part. The money part is MJF says some fucked up stuff. Now I'm going to rip his head off and spit down his throat, but he got away from me. I'm going to get him next. I'll see him next week. We'll get him eventually. We're going to corner that son of a bitch eventually. And that's really what you want, unless you're Brock Lesnar. Then you want to, strategize or something like that. But for the most part, the babyfaces don't have any fire or any passion. And I think it kind of began with Stephanie McMahon emasculating the roster over and over and over again. Like, that got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore. Stephanie was standing there completely untouched. Nobody doing anything. And whatever came into her brain came out of her mouth. And other people was just standing there like, ooh. And the crowd is reacting, and the crowd makes the people feel bad. And look, I get it. Sometimes, the babyface exists to disprove the heel. This is why I'm not too concerned about the Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan angle, because that seems to be where they're building to. Where Becky Lynch, who believed in Liv Morgan at first, doesn't believe in Liv Morgan now, but will be made a believer in Liv Morgan during their match. That seems to be the trajectory that we're going on with the Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan thing. And Becky Lynch is enough of a professional where she will get away with it. Becky Lynch also does not bury people the way Charlotte does. Charlotte is too strong. She needs to be retrained on how to be a heel. All right? Because it's a simple matter. You can win the verbal back and forth. The babyface doesn't have to be a great verbal jouster. That's not necessary. All the babyface has to do is be no nonsense. You say, you trigger some certain words, babyface just starts swinging on you. And then the heel runs away from the fight. And then we should be doing things where the babyface runs to the ring and attacks the heel during their match and starts pummeling them across the head and neck. I don't see why not. Especially if you're going to do a disqualification pin or finish anyway. You might as well do it. The problem, and this is what makes the shows drag so much, is because the stars of the shows are the baby faces. But you have to get us to that point. And what gets me to this is not just basic writing, but what really kind of pushed me into this, making this video, is I was remembering an interview that Raven did. And Raven talked about match structure. And he was talking about, people get too upset when the time gets cut for these matches. And he said, just cut out the shine. And what the shine is the babyface shine. It's the part of the match where the babyface is winning. Because you don't need it. You put the babyface in the hole. Sometimes if you're a heel, you're smart, you can do that almost immediately. What typical matches, what you will see, is you'll see the back and forth. The babyface will shine early. Give you a good example. Darby Allin and CM Punk. When CM Punk wanted to recreate the Bret Hart spot with the 1-2-3 kid, that was the babyface shine. Showing that Darby Allin is just as good as he is by hitting an arm drag on him. And then maybe doing something else to him. Everybody's like, yeah, Darby's doing great. That's the shine. He's shining Darby up. Okay? You don't really need that. It works in certain instances, like it worked in that match. But you don't really need that. Because the heel can cheat. The heel can eye gouge, hit him in the throat. Run away outside the ring. Do anything in order to get heat. Because that's the important part. The heat is the important part. That's what's the problem here. So, yes, it's a good thing that the heels have heat, especially on SmackDown. It is a bad thing that there are no baby faces that can stand up to that heat, that can come back and say, enough's enough. I'm going to look Roman Reigns in the eye and beat his ass. And in a straight up fist fight, I am going to kick Roman Reigns' ass and he's going to run away from me. And Roman's, he's not above that. He did it with Finn Balor. He ran away. So it's not that Roman is super de-duper strong. It's that sometimes they don't book these guys passionate enough. And then with the I'm about to say the Fiend. Jesus, I almost did it again. With the Demon thing, it was just silly. They did the heartbeat and the Demon woke up and then the top rope broke and he lost. Like, that was stupid, And that shit kind of spits in people's faces too, because you did all this cool theatrics. It made people believe again, because now he's fighting back. In the middle of the match, he's fighting back. He's fighting the Usos off. And then he loses to some absolute bullshit that is in no way explained and in no way is, within the story of the match. It doesn't make any sense. So then, yes, people start to lose faith in your babyface, and they actually start to lose interest in your heel. Because now you're telling me some horse shit about divine intervention. Oh, it was God that did it, or some nonsense that somebody told me. I'm like, well, if God is going to protect them to that point, well, shouldn't God protect them in every fucking match? That doesn't make any sense. Because then you have to say, why did God pick Finn Balor to be the guy that he's going to fuck over? Why couldn't it be, Kevin Owens? Why couldn't it have been all the other times Roman was getting beat up in a match and almost lost? Why this particular time and then why never again? It doesn't make sense. So you have to build credibility in your baby faces. It's an absolute crisis right now. WWE does not have any faith in their baby faces. And maybe it's the talent that they have. Maybe it's the fact that they don't want certain people outshined, which could be the issue. The heels are not the stars of the show, but they are on SmackDown, which is doing things backwards as far as I'm concerned. Becky Lynch is one of the stars on Raw, but, they're doing a decent job with her and Liv Morgan. When Bianca Belair was the star on SmackDown, the babyface, she was doing a really good job. But they did a bad job of making sure that her heels had heat. What they were doing was having Bianca just beat everybody. The same thing they was doing with Drew. And then people was kind of like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of watching her beat Bayley 50 times in a row. I'm tired of her beating up Carmella 50 times in a row. Where is somebody who can challenge her? And then they introduced that challenge with Becky Lynch, and she got interesting again. She actually got more over after losing at SummerSlam because people felt like she was getting gypped. That she had gotten fucked over, that she had been screwed. And the interesting thing is she had not had matches with Becky Lynch, so there was a lot of stuff going into that. Now, it didn't quite pay off the way that we wanted it to, with Becky Lynch, getting out of that situation by being moved to Raw. But it's not over because Bianca Belair was also moved to Raw. So there's still some lingering, boiling heat there. But she's kind of moved on for a little while. You can do that. You can move the babyface on for a little while. Give them a little distraction. The dewdrop thing is a little bit of a distraction. It happens a lot. The most famous distraction of all time. The Von Erichs and the Freebirds. Right? That match, that feud began because Kerry Von Erich was trying to be the world champion. He wanted to beat up Ric Flair. But the whole, steel cage and the head thing, and now all of a sudden it ain't about Ric Flair anymore. It's about them goddamn Freebirds who slammed this goddamn steel cage on my head. Great distraction. After you get done with all that, and people don't care about the title anymore, they want to see you beat up the Freebirds. Flair, you'll get to them when you get to them. I want you to get the Freebirds. Get them. So you put Bianca Belair in that type of situation right now with Doudrop, where they didn't do a good job of making sure Doudrop has heat. I will say that. Because they didn't build it properly. But it's a distraction. And you can distract the babyface, that's perfectly fine. That opens the lane up for Liv Morgan to come in and get her shine. All perfectly fine. In fact, if the babyface is not going to win the title in the end, it's the preferred way to do it. It's to distract the babyface somehow. Which is why I said Finn Balor, the top rope breaking, okay, he's not going to win. I'm not upset about that. My problem is you didn't distract him. You didn't put somebody else out there for him to now have to fight because this guy won't let him be the world champion. Instead, he just got beat. And we were all sitting here like, well, I'll be damned. Okay, whatever. And we all collectively moved on. And Finn Balor collectively fell off a fucking cliff. You can do a lot of the things that WWE does. You can do that. You can humiliate the babyface. You can, what he did, what Roman did to Xavier Woods. Tremendous stuff, by the way. The Roman and Xavier Woods stuff was really strong. Roman destroying his property, holding him still and breaking his crown. Very strong stuff. And, and when you look at Xavier Woods and how he was able to come back from that, he was really good. That's what people get into. People get into stuff like that. The issue that we have here is that it's not allowed that often for the heels to get some heat and then for the babyface to make a comeback. And then they do silly things. The Big E thing, which is probably the last thing I discuss, is the Money in the Bank. They really, really, really started him off on the wrong foot by having him win the title via Money in the Bank. It was such an anticlimactic. Look, nobody gives a shit about this whole, Money in the Bank stuff. What people wanted was to see Bobby Lashley get beat, get his comeuppance. The way that you do that with a character like Bobby Lashley is you stand toe-to-toe with him and beat him. He's the almighty strength, head up, one-on-one. You take Big E, you take Big Meaty Lashley, and you slam them together. And then Big E comes out the other side, the better man. Oh, now that wounds Bobby Lashley's pride because he can't be physically dominated. That doesn't happen. That never happens. Even though you're kayfabe in that part, but it never happens. Now that's the impetus for Big E to get jumped from behind by the Hurt Business or something like that. Because if Lashley can't beat you one-on-one, now I got to bring my boys. You could have had that entire storyline through the fucking summer. But what did they do? They had Big E win the title via Money in the Bank. And I was just kind of like, he was dead right there. He was dead. Great reaction. People loved it because Big E won the title. Everybody was so happy. But he was dead. And now there's no heat. It's like now we're struggling to find opponents for him when we had an entire feud we could have done throughout the summer with this whole ordeal, this whole thing. Or at least the fall, I should say. Because there's no reason why they should have just jumped to the cage match and then that was it. Even if Big E won the first match, Lashley probably could have cheated, got disqualified in the second match. We build up to a third or a fourth or whatever the case may be. And then you could have had matches with other guys at the same time. But just the way WWE does the heel thing, it's not cracking, man. And it's definitely showing that these people either are becoming too obsessed with the heel and they're leaning too far into that, or they just don't have any faith in the guys that they have on the roster to be good baby faces. Because they have some really good people that are pretty pure in terms of guys that people like. Cesaro is one. Finn Balor is another one. Ricochet is another one. And they don't have to be perfect. That's the thing. They just have to be people that can get the fans' attention. Rey Mysterio is another one. The Mysterios. But you can't just humiliate them again and again and again and again and again and again. You can't do that because people lose faith in them. People will walk away. They'll say, oh, well, he's just going to get beat up, and they'll move on. You don't want that. You want people to see that tussle back and forth. You want the heel to win sometimes. You want the babyface to win sometimes. You want the heel to win just a little bit more so that the fight can make money later on. Because if the babyface is winning going into the match, you're not going to make any money. All right? People are going to be far more interested if we don't know whether the babyface can do it or not. Whether then I'm for sure 100% the babyface is going to win. This is why I kind of criticized the AEW when they did Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. They basically just told everybody Hangman was winning the belt. There was no drama there. Drama is necessary for wrestling. And that tug of war between heaven and hell, between good and evil, is the drama. And when WWE leans too far heavily into the babyface, which is their biggest issue throughout their entire history with Hogan and Bruno and Cena, when they just have these giant monsters and they just go in there and beat them. Of course, differently for Cena than it was for Hogan. It's different for Cena and Hogan rather than it was for Bruno. Bruno would have stretches with guys. Cena beat the guy the first time he wrestled him, beat the Great Khali 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the fucking ring. You're like, what? Okay, how do we justify a rematch? So that kind of booking needs to stop. The kind of booking where the heel wins clean needs to stop. Charlotte making Asuka submit. Charlotte making Rhea Ripley submit or Nikki Cross submit in the middle of the ring clean needs to stop. Because it is killing the babyfaces. It is killing the company. It is killing the intrigue. It's killing what little participation the fans want to have. The fans want to believe in these characters. Even if they're stupid characters, they want to believe in them. If you keep snatching that faith away, people will stop fucking watching. They're not going to be interested anymore. You have to maintain that delicate balance of the heel looks good, babyface looks good. Somebody's got to go over. But that doesn't mean the other person needs to get buried. Just somebody got to go over. But then you also got to have something for the guy later. Again, a distraction. You can distract heels too. Heel loses. He wants a title shot. I'm not done with this guy. Some other babyface shows up. I'm tired of you. You've gotten 2 shots. You need to bail out. You need to get out of here. It's my turn now. Now you got a new thing with them. There needs to be something done. Because the state of babyfaces in WWE is absolutely dreadful. It is dreadful. And it's embarrassing. Because WWE, more than any wrestling company, outside of maybe the smaller territories, recognizes the conquering hero. And they built their entire company around the conquering hero. It's like when Disney goes away from what makes them work. Disney does animated movies for young girls. Now that they try to be something for everybody, Disney is trash. When Disney was what Disney was supposed to be, Disney was the best in the world. That's why it became an empire. When WWE does what WWE does better than everyone else, that's why they're the evil empire. You cannot start all of a sudden flipping, and I was saying you want your top heels to be the stars of the show, because that's not what WWE fans want. We're used to strong heels, sure. Strong heel, though. Not the heel is unbeatable and they're going to completely emasculate the babyface. Because that's never been what the WWE is about. Just like Disney ain't never been about masculine storytelling. It's not what they do. So stick to what you do. That delicate balance between good and evil, with good overcoming more often than not. Because that's what helped you beat the NWA and WCW. When those guys would never let the babyfaces get over, WWE didn't have a problem with Hogan dropping the leg on somebody and getting him the fuck out of here. Right? Steve Austin gives the guy a stunner. Boom! It's over. While WCW's fiddle fucking around with the NWO for the 5th time because nobody could ever beat them and get them out of the way. Steve Austin stunner a guy. Let's move on to the next guy for him to stunner. And people move on and people are loving it. I think it's great. So, I'm not saying that everybody needs to be Steve Austin or Hulk Hogan. I'm just using them as an example. They know what to do. It's just a matter of them actually doing it. So, that's the state of babyfaces, man. It's absolutely abysmal right now. It's very tough. And it wasn't too long ago where I was making videos talking about how the heels sucked on these shows. It was literally last year. Because I think it was also Braun Strowman, because he was killing all the heels on SmackDown. It was Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman. They were just eating everybody alive, and they're big guys, so they probably should. But you also have to. You disrupted the force. You disrupted the balance between babyface and heel. You got to maintain that balance.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse crap. They distort, so question